Thank you. Well, good morning, church. It's still morning, I think, for a few more minutes. So, I'm Shelby Raines. A lot of you know me because there's no place like home, and I'm home today. So, I am the executive director at Marriage Matters Jackson. Been doing that for 10 years. We've been blessed for 10 years to still be out there promoting, preparing, and preserving healthy relationships and families. I have just a short time today to convey my passion for healthy marriages and families and encourage you guys to work on your own marriages and families, and also to implore you to join in the work with what we're doing to stabilize and help families flourish in our community. So, got a lot to do, so let's do this. I run an organization that our purpose is to help people avoid unnecessary divorce, because we know that unnecessary divorce is something that is running, kind of rampant in our culture, and the victims are the kids. And then that becomes kids that are not in healthy relationships, and then they, in turn, probably don't have their own healthy foundations, and so it becomes a generational thing. So what we want to do is start back at that beginning relationship, that foundational relationship, and see if we can do some good things in our community to build that relationship where everything starts. And so we understand that there's necessary divorce. Those are things like abusive situations, substance abuse, physical, emotional abuse, abandonment, infidelity, all those kinds of things. I get it. I understand that divorce happens sometimes. So I'm not here to beat up on anybody. I'm not here to make you feel bad if you were a single parent or you were a kid of divorce. My parents were divorced. They're wonderful people. They hate divorce too. Not good, but we're all good now. So I want to talk to you from a place of experience that it doesn't have to, dictate the rest of your life that something like that happens. What I want to talk about is today, where you're at, what you're doing in your relationships. How can we build from where we are and make things strong going forward? So there's no place like home. That's our theme. It's a 3-week series. Pastor Mark went to Europe and said, plug a hole for me, would you? So this is the best he could find. I apologize. That's what you get. He's like, you that sits in the balcony, come do this for a day. It's a little intimidating speaking at home because I know a lot of you, so I'll try not to make eye contact so you don't think I'm talking about you at any point. I'm speaking in generalities. But there's no place like home, and this has been my home for 43 years. I know I look too young to be a member of a church for 43 years, but I did, the nursery and Joy Bells and CYC and youth group, and then I decided to choose this as my home as an adult and a place to raise our kids. I imported my husband Drew from Dearborn Free Methodist Church 20 years ago. He came here and we made this our home. So this is home for us. John Kajawa is one of the guys that ushers on the way in the morning. He calls me the marriage lady. So Drew's the banker and I'm the marriage lady. And that's a lot to live up to because people will go, oh, well, if you're the marriage lady, you must have a perfect marriage. The funny thing about being home is there's probably about 90 people in here that are like, no, they don't. They don't. Because nobody has a perfect marriage, but Drew and I don't have a perfect marriage, but we have a healthy marriage. And what that means is that we love each other very much. And we have committed to a lifetime together. And we don't like each other all the time. And I'm sure you've experienced this yourselves, unless you just have this amazing relationship with no hiccups. But I have these 3 wonderful kids, Sam and Faith and Grace. They're awesome kids. I adore them. I love them. But I don't like them all the time. And you know what? Those 4 people, my kids and my husband, they don't always like me because I'm not always easy to live with. So that's what's cool about the way this whole family and home thing is that there's this strong commitment. There's this foundational thing where we're going to stick this out and figure this out even when it gets ugly and messy. Because that commitment keeps us hanging on and keeps that structure there so that there's this stability for when we get back around to the part where we like each other. I always like my kids best when they're sleeping. I take pictures of them, and I'm like, they're so precious, they're so wonderful. And then they wake up, and they say things, and then, I love you guys, but you just mess it up when you talk sometimes. So, what better time to talk about home and about relationships than the week before Thanksgiving, when we're all going to be, stuck together, overeating and looking at everybody's idiosyncrasies, and that's just kind of a funny place that we put this. I'm sure it was strategic, but there's no place like home. So when you think about that, and you think about the whole analogy of like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz kind of thing, where they're going with this, is that there's times in our family, I'm just being honest, that I want to have the ruby slippers and there's no place like home, because I don't want to be home anymore. I'm like, where can I go? Where else can I get to? I wish I had ruby slippers, but that would have been perfect. Make a note. But that only is momentary, because I don't really want to leave my home. But there are people in different circumstances where they probably would like the ruby slippers to get out of there. But that's the neat thing about family, is that it comes back around. So we live in a place called Parma. I don't know if you've heard of Parma or journeyed there before. I will just say one of my sons, I only have one, hates that we live in Parma because he wants to live where the cool people live, in Spring Arbor. So whoever lives in Spring Arbor, Sam thinks you're awesome. So we live in Parma. We live in this cute little house, and we love our home. It is my soft place to land. It is my happy place. We live across the street from grandparents, so these guys only have to go across the street to get a second opinion on what Drew and I rule in their lives. We don't like what you said, so we're going over there. But we live in this house, and what I've noticed is no matter what we do to maintain this house, things keep breaking down, okay? So there's a window that is broken, and it's not healing itself. Drew. Just want to mention it in front of all these people. And the roof was a depressingly expensive repair. And, there's all these things that just keep, you think you got it solved, and then something else comes up. You need to do something like that. So that's where my home is. That's my home, and my physical home just keeps deteriorating. And we can't seem to get a hold of it, get a handle on it. But I realize we're all in the same boat. Everybody says that. When we get together, we're like, I know, water heater, huh? I never thought I'd care about talking about water heaters with people and things like that. But we're all in this kind of journey together. So we understand home. We understand what maintaining a home and all that kind of stuff means. So I live in Parma, Michigan. That's my home. But what I know as a Christ follower is that there's no place like our real home. I'm not sticking around here forever. That gives me great hope, because as much as I love my house, and I love my family, and I love my job, and I love all these kinds of things, it can be a drag sometimes. There can be days that I'm like, really? What's life expectancy now for people? There are times when you start thinking that stuff. But the joy comes when I say, there's no place like our real home. And I get that, there's no place like home. Sometimes I just want him to, can you come pick us up? That'd be really great if you wanted to come now. But we live in this fallen world, and so there's all this brokenness, and you watch the news, and you're just like, what's the point? This is so terrible. But here's where you kind of bring it back around. We're all in the same boat. The human condition is the human condition. We live in a broken world, so we're all dealing with some level of brokenness and decay. Everything here is just going to disappear if you don't maintain it. But what I love is that there is an answer for this brokenness. A breach it happened between us and God. Sin came into the world. There's a breach. There's something that divided us. He's a holy God. We're broken people. The coolest part of this is that he designed a way to repair that. He sent Jesus. And he said, Jesus, you're my son. You didn't do a thing wrong, but you're going to take the punishment for all these people over time. And he did that. A holy God said, you know what? I feel like I want to repair this relationship. So he made a way for that to happen. That, y'all, I could stop now, is the greatest relationship news that you're ever going to get. You'll never, ever hear better news than the fact that you were separated from a holy God, and he sent a way to fix that relationship. Wow, that is huge to me. So our real home is heaven. This one's temporary. Without sounding sacrilegious, carrying with the Wizard of Oz theme, Jesus is like the ruby slippers. He is going to take us home someday. He's the reason that we're connected back to God. So Jesus is our ruby slippers. I know it's kind of weird and probably not good theology, but go with me. And if you don't like ruby slippers, ruby loafers, okay? But Jesus is the ruby loafers. That's going to be the only thing you take away now. But he's coming back to get us. He's preparing a place in heaven in our real home. And just because we become a Christ follower, has anybody found that when you became a Christ follower, all your problems went away and nothing ever happened bad again? I've literally never seen a person say that, because the problems of the world don't change, but who walks through it with you does change. And so that's what I love, is that he's going to walk through it with me. In John 16:33, I love the word of God because it's timeless. And it says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble. Laid it out there. You're going to have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world. He told us the end. We're going to be fine. We've got a real home to head to. So deal with some of the stuff that's happening here, because we've got a place to go that's going to be amazing, okay? That's comforting news. So we've got this hope of heaven. And the way I look at this is that when we find hope in our earthly homes, when we bring it down, we got the heaven thing down. We know that's, when you follow Christ, that's what's happening. But look at your earthly homes and families, because that experience here is clearing the path for understanding that ultimate hope and redemption through Christ's sacrifice. So when our earthly homes and situations and families are a little bit of a mess, it can get in the way of understanding our hope of heaven. The opposite of hope is futility. I don't care, whatever. I've gone so long without hope that, whatever, that it's meaningless. Pointlessness breeds despair. And when we continue, our culture is continually cranking out a lot of this despair. It's cranking out messages like, what's the use? Why even try? Why even get married? You're just going to get divorced. By the way, let me clear that up for you. It's not a 50-50 proposition. We've been lied to for years. The divorce rate is not 50%. It's actually more around 25%. Can you believe that we've been lied to that significantly? That means about 75% of marriages are actually healthy, actually doing well. Healthy meaning we've got to work on some stuff. And another good thing is that when you're in as a couple, when you're in an active church or faith setting together, it decreases your chances even more of suffering from divorce. So this garbage that we've been told that it's a flip of the coin, hope it works out for you. What people are hearing that and they're going, well, it's futile, it's pointless, why would I get married? So our divorce rate isn't even our biggest problem anymore, everybody. It's also a falling marriage rate. People are still coupling, people are still producing kids, but they're not forming these families. And so that's where I want to kind of focus today. Our earthly homes, I'm going to put it really bluntly, our earthly homes are they're reflecting something. So is your home, is your family reflecting heaven and what that could be like, or is it reflecting hell and giving people kind of a hopelessness, a pointless feeling to this world? So home means different things to different people. For me, I told you, home is a soft place to land. It's a happy thing, all that kind of stuff. But there's a new term they're using for things that we know about that have happened to people. They call it the ACE, A-C-E, Adverse Childhood Experiences. And people that experience multiple ACEs in their childhood carry some pretty big scars going through adulthood. And they last and they last and they last. They don't just go away unless you do something to kind of deal with that trauma, okay? So I want to give you an example of when a board member of ours was sharing about her 90-year-old mother who has dementia. So she's in this kind of storm of life, because these storms come. And dementia has gotten her, and she's in this fog of not understanding things and remembering things. But my board member friend was saying, what was very interesting to us is that she's 90 years old, and the memory that just keeps coming through when she has these moments of clarity where she's talking about something is the grief of her father leaving their family when she was 7 years old. The grief of him, she remembers in her clear moments, him walking away, driving away and disappearing and never coming back. He went back to Norway and left a family of 9 kids. And that hurt her so deeply that 87 years later, when her mind gives her some glimpses into things, that's what she remembers. Adverse childhood experiences profoundly impact us. And if they go untended to, they manifest themselves in some really ugly ways. But I just want you to know that home means so many different things to different people. So when you look at this, some people, like I said, it's a safe haven, it's a good place to be. That's what we hope it should be. It should be a place where you can kind of just be yourself and recharge. To other people, home is a volatile place. could explode at any moment. You know, you've probably been in somebody's home, or maybe you had that experience where you're like, I can feel it. When you walk through the door, there is something just getting ready to go. To other people, home's not even a consistent place. They don't even know where they're going to be. They don't have a place to land, and they just keep moving from place to place to place. So when you talk to them about home, we have this eternal home, they're like, I can't even figure out where my next home this next week is going to be. So do you see how home and reflecting to heaven is a little tough for a lot of people? So here's our stick man. I love the old guy. Pastor Mark's been bringing him up for a while, and it might be easy to ignore how profound this is because it's a stick man. But our stick man is honestly, you guys, the greatest sermon summed up in a little picture like this. We have that hope that we just talked about, the hope of heaven. We're going to get there. But I don't want you to just sit there and go, okay, I'm in. Good for me. Good luck to everybody else. And you sit there at the bus stop waiting for Jesus to come back. That's not a way to live life. That's not what you should be doing with your life. He's just waiting like, I figured it out, all set. We also have this other part where we understand we're in a hurting world. We're part of a hurting world, and like Jesus is the stick man. He gives us the hope of heaven. He gave us that access. We need to be little Jesuses, little Jesus. I don't know what the multiple of Jesus is, but we've got to be this echo of him, where we have a hope for heaven and connect other people in the hurting world to heaven. So that's what you're supposed to do in response, is figure out how to connect people with their heavenly home. I do an activity with kids in school, the schools that we go to, because we do how to avoid falling for a jerk or jerkette with teenagers. It is amazing. It is so great to watch these kids get these epiphanies like, oh, there's a better way to do relationships. How about that? But some of the things that I've seen, I'm going to give you just really quick. I could go on and on and on if you want to talk to me later about some of this stuff. What I'm seeing in our schools in Jackson County, these are kids in our schools, our good schools and our bad schools, however you qualify them. I hear people do that all the time. There's a girl that said casually while we're in this class together, she says, yeah, I don't know what to say about my childhood on this answer here, because my dad's got 27 kids, so I don't really know all of them, and I know 3 of them pretty well, but there's 27 of us, and he's been in prison, and when he did get out of prison, he stole my brother and I for a month and wanted to spend some time with us, and then he was robbing stores and dealing drugs, and I said, well, what did you do while he was doing that? She goes, oh, he would sit my brother and I down by a dumpster, and then he'd come pick us up and we'd go home. And she said home, and I was like, I can't imagine what home was like for this kid. And she was saying it pretty casually, like, not like bragging about it, but she was kind of like, well, and that's my situation. Okay, that's her version of home. That's her version of family. Wow, that is a profound hurt that kid's dealing with. The other kid that he pulled me aside and he said, I'm not sure how to answer my family of origin, like what my childhood's been like, because I don't know my dad. I think I have one. I'm like, okay, biologically, you have a dad somewhere. You know, like, it was funny. We were kind of joking about that. He's like, I've never met him, but I know he exists because I exist. And then he said, my mom's in prison for running over somebody with a car. Thought he was kidding at first, and then he wasn't. I was like, okay, all right, that's what he's dealing with. He said, so I just bounce around. I'm not really in the foster care system. I just kind of bounce around. So I guess I would say this house where I stay most of the time, that would be my home. He's 14 years old, you guys. He's in 9th grade. And he doesn't have a sense of home. I wanted to throw up. I was like, oh, honey, okay. I get in my car and I bawl my eyes out because I can't believe the hurts. And that's just 2. There were other kids sharing stories. That's just 2 of them. Other schools, kids saying these other stories and telling us, this is why I don't know about relationships, because this is what I've seen. Generations deep of people that have no idea what a healthy relationship looks like. So that's what kind of compels me to want to do something to change the home life for people, because I know these kids don't want to live in that in that setting. And you get an overwhelming majority of kids that say, I don't want a relationship like my parents. We've got to do better, you guys. We've got to do better modeling healthy relationships and apprenticing these kids. They're watching everything we do. They're gonna do what we taught them to do. So there's no place like home. I'm gonna go back to this. A friend of mine gave me this that helped us build Marriage Matters Jackson, the Weatherwax Foundation. They're no longer funding us. They closed their doors last year. We knew that, but now we're on our own to fund ourselves and to do this and to get community support. But she gave me this verse, and I have clung to this for a long time. She said to me, we are repairers of the breach. There has been a breach between us and God and a breach in our families between each other. And we at Marriage Matters Jackson are restorers of the breach. And that hit me hard. I have stuck with that. So I wanted to share this verse with you guys so that you could have get that same feeling that that's what we're called to do. That's our purpose. That's our purpose in this world while we're waiting for our next home. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So let's look at the verse here. And it's King James Version because I like the these and thous. It makes you feel like, I don't know, something like, yeah, we're tough. And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations. Thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell. Isaiah 58:12. We are called to raise up foundations of generations. We are supposed to be able to function generation to generation. We are not doing a very good job of that as a community and as a culture. We are called to be repairers of this breach. There's a breach, accept it, we got to repair it. And then restorers of paths to dwell. Restorers of homes and families and places so that kids can go to school and worry about math and science and history instead of what am I going to eat tonight or who's going to be living in my home. I don't like these people that get brought into my home. The most fragile situation for any kid is when their mom and dad are not in a healthy relationship and have fractured things and they're bringing different people in and you're living different places. That is the most vulnerable place, physically, socially, economically, spiritually, everything. That is the most vulnerable place you can put a kid, is in this fractured place. So, I don't want it to all be gloom and doom. Let's see what we can do about it. Let's see what we can do with this purpose. So, raise up a foundation of generations. Seems a little daunting, seems a little overwhelming. But I want you to know here's some of the foundational truths that I'm working on because people want to debate specific stuff or talk about, well, there's all these exceptions to what family should be. We've got to get back to the point where we say there is an ideal. God set up an ideal situation. This is how you would do best. Knowing that destruction and storms and all these tough things are going to come at you, and then there's exceptions to that. We get that there are exceptions, but we are becoming a culture who focuses on the exceptions, not on the overwhelming majority of people that are in a similar situation and can benefit from banding together. One thing I should mention is that Marriage Matters Jackson, I chose for it not to be a religious organization. I'm a Christian, I'm comfortable talking about Jesus with everything, and I will with anybody that wants to talk to me about it. But I realized when we put it in the context of, oh, we're a Christian organization, people are going to start saying, well, what kind of Christian? Are you Catholic Christian or Baptist Christian or whatever kind of Christian? And then we've divided up again. I don't want to divide up. I want our community to do better. So we take out the whole thing of whose faith we follow. You know, we stick to some foundational truths. But these are the truths I'm talking about today, is that marriage and family is the foundation of civilization. Fact. It's true. Over time, that's the way it is. People form and are drawn together to create a bond and to procreate. That was the original function. That's how we keep this world populated. Number two, it's God's design. Read Genesis. I'm not going to get into it. He designed it. It's his blueprint. I'm coming from that platform. If you want to debate that, have an argument about that, that's a different channel. That's a different time. Number three, fragile foundations. We need to accept the fact that when we have fractured families, never forming families, broken homes, people don't want to call it broken homes. They're broken. Most people that are in them say, this is not a good situation, but we're going to make the best of it. Good. That's the hopeful message. Make the most of something that's broken. But let's not pretend like it's not broken. We have kids that are raised that they're like, no, my parents told me that their happiness matters and that I should be fine with it, but I'm not fine with it. We need to recognize that fragile foundations set people up for failure. Now, can you overcome it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I don't want to debate all the different nuances of that kind of stuff or the different exceptions to that. But listen, I'm a kid who went through divorce. None of my family likes divorce. We think it's a crummy thing. We wouldn't like it to be that way, but we're fine. You know why? Because we were resilient. We figured out how to put patches back on that foundation and go, nope, we're going to do better. We are going to still be a family. There are ways to get through these foundational fractures. Just last night I saw one of those word art things, that are everywhere. Everybody's got a word art thing hanging up. And it summed up everything my mom taught me about the storms that come and shake your foundation. I just remember thinking, I feel like she painted that for me. When something bad happens to you, you have 3 choices. You can either let it define you, you can let it destroy you, or you can let it strengthen you. That's resiliency. That's what these adverse childhood experiences, that's what gets you past those. Am I resilient? It's not what happened to me, it's how do I move on past it? How do I find some restoration and some repair so that I can get to a place where I'm functioning back in a healthy stick man figure, okay? So those are my truths that I want to say, that this is part of the foundation. I'm working from that foundation, that these things are the optimal state, knowing that we live in a broken world and a lot of things go wrong. So storms are going to come. We've seen so many examples. I mean, we've seen footage over and over and over again about the floods, the hurricanes, the earthquakes, the fires. I mean, we see stuff that could depress us every day, right? In the news about our weather and natural disasters. But it's a good analogy for what we're talking about, because if you see a storm coming, you know what's happening, board it up. Get going. Say, you know what? We're going to save this house. We're going to save this family. We're going to put some plywood on this, and we're going to make this family work. There are things that you can do in these unnecessary divorce situations where I'm saying, before you get to that point where you think, let's just bulldoze the house. Well, a tornado's coming. We might as well just bulldoze the house now. That's not what we need to do. Let's take a minute and figure out what we could do to make things a little better. Think about what we could do to make things survive the storm. Then we see a lot of things like this. This to me says, this place was probably paradise a week before, and with one storm, it wiped it out. And it's destructive, and it looks like a scary place, and it's complicated. I mean, that lady's walking across power lines with a baby, thinking that it's not going to end well. But you look at this stuff and you go, that's an analogy of what happens in our lives. Do we let a storm come and just take everything out from underneath us? Do we let something take us, and be so overwhelmed with the mess that we don't know what to do? I want to challenge you that what we should do is peek out after a storm, figure out what needs to be done, gather up with some other people and say, what do we need to do? It's easy to be overwhelmed. It's easy. Satan would love to overwhelm us. He loves keeping us in a boat with a hole so that all you're doing is bailing water. All you're doing is surviving. If he could do that with all of us, guess what? There's no body of Christ. There's no people helping each other. It's everybody surviving. And it's an ugly world when everybody's just in survival mode. So you get together and you say, how can we fix this together? When you team up, anytime you team up, things are more effective. Sometimes it's just minor repairs you need to do. Sometimes it's a tree limb. You come out and you go, oh, sad that was my favorite tree, but it broke, and thank goodness the white minivan was saved. I actually can tell you, one time there were trees creaking in our yard in a storm, and my kids almost went and parked the minivan underneath it because they wanted the white minivan gone. They didn't do it, but there's no insurance fraud here. But there might be just minor stuff that happens in your yard, and you go, okay, not a big storm, but there's some cleanup to do. You can't leave it. You got to go out and do it. You got to go take care of the maintenance. You've got to do those things to kind of clean up after a storm and make sure everything's okay. It doesn't cost that much time or investment to just get everybody out there and clean it up. But if you leave it, it starts to get uglier. Do you see what I'm doing here with the analogies? So you can't ignore it. But that's why things like Marriage Matters Jackson exist, to do date nights, to do things that say, you know what, let's just keep things good. Let's just mow the lawn. Let's water the lawn. Let's just do some things to keep things in good shape. But then we've got people that had this happen. And they're like, yeah, we were fine, but now there's a tree on our house. And it could be illness, it could be job loss, it could be infidelity, it could be so many things. But that's significant damage. That's going to need maybe a professional. But you know what happens sometimes, what we do when there's even this level of damage, is that we get used to living with it. Like we live with the broken window, like I said. But this is something you think, well, that's absurd. But they could live in that other part of the house, and because they're overwhelmed with how to figure out how to get that tree out of there, they just start living around it. And then one day somebody comes to the door and they're like, hey, you got a tree in your house? Oh, I forgot about that. Well, we got to do something about that tree. We do that with our problems. We sometimes get that's dysfunction. We start to live around it. Like as a survival technique, we're just going to live around this and start doing this stuff. But that's what happens is we start to not see that there's a big tree on our house. So this one's going to need a little outside help. Then you've got the situations that are like this, where it's a complete tear down. This is like, you know what, things are so bad that we're just going to have to rip the thing down. So my question here is, on a tear down, you've got two choices. You think it's only one choice. You think it's just divorce. Is it a demo divorce, or is it a demolition do-over? We're going to do this differently. We're going to rebuild this. We can do this. I have seen the most beautiful stories of people that said, you know what, this thing is a complete teardown. This relationship is a mess. But you know what, we both would love to rebuild it. You know what we do? Bulldoze it. Start again. Do something new. Change some stuff. And I've seen the most beautiful, restored families for generations to come because they decided to rebuild instead of just demo and try to go build something completely different. I have a front row seat, you guys, of seeing people at this developmental age, and they're seeing people just saying, you know what, didn't work, pull it down. If that's what they've been taught, if that's what they have seen over and over and over again, what are they going to do but to repeat it? We can't be surprised when that's what they repeat. But God is the great healer and redeemer of all broken things. God can take the ugliest, most horrible thing, the worst fixer-upper, and just make it this wonderful, cozy, warm place. Seems ambitious, I know, but he is the great healer and redeemer. We just have to work alongside him. So here's the repairer. This is the repair part of this. We talked about the foundation. This is actually a graphic I found, and it's from a publication in the 40s of a guy that was a rebellious Free Methodist, E.E. Shellhammer. And he had this thing called The Repairer, which was a newspaper type of thing that he put out about how to be radical Free Methodists, which you don't hear radical Free Methodists very often. But we're pretty good rule followers a lot of times. But what he was saying is, be different from the world. We're in that same predicament, you guys. There's a certain game show host who, if you were to go on his show, you could win a fortune by spinning a wheel. He's on the board at Hillsdale College, I think. So somebody said, you know, we should ask him if we could do like a big game night, bring people in, we'll do some marriage education, but we'll have some fun and kind of just really bring a lot of people in to do some great Marriage Matters stuff. He sent back a letter and said, thank you, but I have to decline. I don't take on controversial topics like that. Controversial topics like a game night for couples to have fun? Wow, that's the world we live in. That working on our relationships, healing marriages, building families up, instead of just watching them decay and go, I wish I knew why that tree was on that house. That's controversial, you guys. What we're doing is countercultural. That is weird to me that we are countercultural and going against the norm by simply trying to give kids a home where the people that made them can live harmoniously, and even if they're divorced, if they could just get along and help everybody build that foundation back up again. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world right now, we're going to change it, where we can be repairers of the breach. We have got to help people heal broken walls. You have to heal your broken walls, and you've got to help other people. Broken walls happened. We know that that's what happened. But if you need to just patch up a spot today, put a little spackle on it, get things better, do it. It's never too late for happily ever after. If you've got one of these where your walls are completely down, maybe you have to call in some reinforcements. Maybe you need a little bit of help. Maybe you need to be one of those helpers that comes into a family and you go, listen, I believe for you. I know you guys don't believe it, but I believe for you that you can find happily ever after. We've got to be repairers of these walls. We have to be. That is the only way that we are going to function and flourish and head forward. Lastly, restorers of paths to dwell in. There is not a street in this nation without a hurting home. You won't find it. You can go down any street, anytime, you'll find somebody that says, yeah, we're really hurting. We have the answer. We know. I know the great restorer. Do you remember on the movie Elf, where he's like, Santa, I know him. We need to be like that about Jesus. Jesus, I know him. He's the great restorer. We don't have to live in this junk. You don't have to have this garbage cluttering your streets. We can do better than this, you guys. Can you imagine if we were that excited about it? I'm challenging myself too. When are we going to get excited about the fact that we can restore this? We can do this. Imagine if we took ownership of our streets. What if, this is a big project this guy's got on, but look, he's smiling, I think. But Satan's tossing stuff in our streets. Imagine our streets. Imagine these streets here. He is just tossing everything he can to block you from being in community and in healthy relationship with each other and with Jesus. He's going to throw pornography at you. He's going to throw infidelity at you. He's going to throw greed. I mean, we could go around the room and pepper all these different words of what he's throwing out to us. Satan wants to win his game. We know that he doesn't. So why are we letting him anywhere near our homes and our paths to dwell in? We've got to clear the junk out of here. I get it. I'm at a stage of life where I'm running. I go in, I go out. I don't necessarily talk to my neighbors. I don't, I'm kind of, except for the ones across the street that insert themselves on us and tell us how to paint our house and do all those things. But the other neighbors, I'm not being aware of what they need. And imagine if I took care of my neighbors and you took care of your neighbors and we started actually caring for people outside of our property line and even outside of our family. Wouldn't that be amazing what could happen? It gets me out of my comfort zone, and I'm challenging myself. I'm telling you, I'm challenging myself to think about what I need to do in my immediate family, in my extended family, my friends, my coworkers, my actual neighbors. What do we need to do to extend this hand where we say, let me clear that out of the street for you. Let me get this out of here because I know there's hope for you. I know there's hope in this life for you. So look at this. If you were only to look from the window up, you'd think, oh, their house was fine. Nothing happened with the flood. Trees are fine, everything. So sometimes on the surface, like if you were only to see that far up, you think it's okay. But then you realize you hear from somebody and they're like, yeah, they're divorced. What? They seem fine. We don't realize sometimes how far underwater people are. So we've got to be able to share in community with each other that when we start to take on water. Sometimes the cry for help is obvious. I wish sometimes my neighbor, if they wanted something, needed something, would put it this obvious at the end of their street. Family of 5, no power, no generator. I'm a girl who likes to take action. If someone told me that overtly, that they needed help, I would stop everything and go help them. But I'm not good at being conscious of it. So we've got to look for ways to be a little more conscious of what's happening and to get people to share with us what they could need. Somebody has said to me before, if people understood the destruction that the decay of family is taking on our kids, on individuals, on our culture, on our generations to come, if they really understood the damage, because it's not physical, it doesn't show up like it does with tree branches and that kind of stuff, they would have telethons. There'd be telethons, there'd be celebrities. Please call now. We've got to save our kids. We've got to do this stuff. But it doesn't have that kind of face on it. It's more silent. Satan's using this as kind of like a more silent, like, I'll just knock them out individually. So we give money to all these different things because we can help that. But we forget that this major tree is on our house and we need to remove it. Does anybody know who that is? I will remember you. Kills me every time. A one-eyed cat, dog with weepy eyes, and I'm like, we've got to save the animals. We do. We need to save the animals and do all that good stuff too. But I'm going, listen people, we've got a mission field right here in our community where we need to help families, help promote, prepare, and preserve healthy families because that's the structure of our society. So let me give you the thing here. Hurting world seems overwhelming. Big picture. I'm not sure how I can definitely bite off that, but we try to do stuff. We try to do things with world missions and stuff, and those are all good things. But then you got to zoom in a little more and go, oh yeah, then there's just the stuff in Michigan that we got to deal with. So Google Earth helps us get a little closer. Now Jackson County, okay, I'm getting to a point where I feel like I can do something. So we create this marriage initiative to try to help the families in this community. Other communities are begging me to help them figure out how they can do this in their communities. So it's pretty cool. We've got something great going here, guys, because other people want to copy us. But what I'm saying is we've got a lot of work to do just right here within this county to help people survive and thrive and have that connection that the stick man shows us. So then here's how to be a first or second responder, because a lot of times we feel helpless. I don't know how to help people. What am I supposed to do? I'm not a relationship expert. Well, neither was I. I've been teaching myself how to do this. Maintain your own home and family. If you guys will just take care of your own people, that's your first assignment. But then be ready to help others. Home extends outside of your property line. It's a listening ear. It's a helping hand. It's connecting them to resources. It's saying, hey, Marriage Matters Jackson has this 48-week-a-year, every Monday night thing. I don't know about it, but I'll go with you, or I'll give you guys a pamphlet. You guys should go. Just have a date night. You've been kind of communicating, kind of choppy lately. That's all you have to do sometimes, is to extend that hand, okay? It's not always huge things that you have to do. So today, when you go out at our table, there's a little card. It has this on it, and it has rebuilder, repairer of the breach on it. I want you to take those cards. Take a few. This has some interesting things on it, like it's got the dates or the times for our Building Better Marriages workshop, but things you can do to help us. I need you guys. I can't go through this community and touch and connect and find out everybody's situation, so I need you to be the hands and feet. So here we are, zooming in on Google Earth. Literally right now in this building, we've all gathered. For whatever reason, this Sunday morning, we've all happened to be here at the same time. So I want you guys to join with me in praying for some of the hurts that are in this building today. I know that there are many that I don't even have any clue about. You guys might be standing in rubble of what you thought was a great life, and now it's kind of fractured a little bit. Maybe you just feel like, what, I've got some cracks that we need to kind of work on. There's something going on. Maybe you know somebody else that you go, man, this family, I've got such a burden for them. There's some major stuff going on with them. What do we do to help? I want us today to wrap up our service by praying. And I want you guys to, the band is going to play a song, and I want you guys to move to the aisles, because that's going to symbolize our streets. I want to take back our streets. I want to do some hard work together to take back our streets. I want you to, when the music plays, I want you to head to the streets, and I want you to start thinking about how we can take this back, how we can defeat what the devil has thrown into our streets and is trying to make a terrible place for everybody to dwell. We can do better. And we can do this together. I really, really, really believe that. I want you guys to stand up, if you would. And I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3. And I want you to tell me the name of your street. Everybody say it, okay? 1, 2, 3. South Parma. Can you imagine if every street that you guys just mentioned across this county, maybe outside of our county, you started to repair and restore some good families and some good healthy happenings in those homes? Can you imagine if homes could be restored? We could absolutely change the world if we did that, you guys. So I feel inspired that we need to do that. What I want you guys to do is, now they're going to start playing, head to the aisles and just kind of fill in. Come on up here. We're going to do a prayer time after this. So if you feel like there's something you want to bring for somebody else or for yourselves, come on up to the altar area. But come on, get in the aisles. Get in there right now. Drew, you move first. Get into the aisle. I can tell him what to do. Get into the aisles. Come on down here. We're filling our streets. We're going to fill the streets. And then I'm going to pray after we sing this song. God can move mountains, but he needs us to help him. He needs us to want to move mountains. Do you guys believe you want to move mountains? Yes? I want to move mountains. I want to see families restored, people living in good places. So let's pray together and just seek heaven and open our eyes and our minds to what Jesus has for us. Lord Jesus, you are the repairer and the restorer of this breach between us and God, and we thank you so much. You paid a price that you didn't deserve, and you give us access to heaven, but you also walk us through this hurting world. And Jesus, because of that light and because of what you did, we are all little lights that can go out and we can be in the streets where we live, where we work, where we play, Jesus. You can go with us, and if we are willing, I know you will work through us. You will help us reach out to these people who just need a little repair and a little restoration after a storm. Lord, maybe it's somebody in this room today that they're like, I could barely get out of bed this morning. I didn't know what to do. I'm in such rubble. Lord, I just pray that you'll give some light and some hope to them. Lord, maybe there's somebody here today that's carrying a tremendous burden for someone else. They know of a family that is hurting and they're standing in rubble. Lord, is there something that that person can do to bring a little light, a little hope? Because the devil wants us to be convinced that despair and hopelessness is the way of this world. And we know, Jesus, that is not who you are. That is not what you have for us. So I pray with faith, believing, Lord, that a group of people that have assembled on a Sunday morning to learn more about you would see that they want to be repairers and restorers of this terrible breach that happened. Lord, help us repair the breaches in our families. I pray, Lord, that you would give us a renewed sense of priority with our own families, that we would make sure we're maintaining our families and looking outward to helping other people. Jesus, I just thank you so much for all the people in this world that can be game changers for somebody else today. Lord, lay on the hearts of all these people, I pray, somebody, a face, a name, somebody that they could help in some restoration today. You are so good and you are so mighty that you can see better and higher than where we are. You can get to a higher plane and see what we can't see. We love you, Jesus. Go with us into our streets and help us to be restorers and repairers of this breach. In your name, amen.